My dad humiliated me when I brought my kids to the holiday brunch, so I froze our joint account. And that's when he started begging for forgiveness. I'm Nancy. I'm the daughter who always says yes. The one who shows up, covers the bill, takes the phone calls at 2 a.m., and hands over money even when I barely have enough for myself. The last month alone, I sent over $700 to my parents. Half of it was for my dad's urgent car repairs, which funny enough turned into a new outdoor smoker and a pair of Bluetooth headphones for his walks. A few weeks before that, my mom asked for help paying her dental bill, then posted a photo of her spa day with a friend in a hotel suite. I didn't even ask. I never do. They've always been like that, selfish, but embarrassingly proud of how little they give in return. My mom told me once that having me at 17 ruined her body. I was 10. That was the moment I understood what it meant to be an obligation. My dad, when he's drunk, and that's often, likes to joke that if condoms weren't so expensive in the 90s, he'd have a boat by now. No one ever corrects him, so I say yes. Yes to bringing the kids to their house, even though my mother criticizes their clothes, and my dad calls my daughter moody if she doesn't hug him. Yes to paying for their Wi-Fi so they can stream shows and ignore my calls. Yes to keeping a shared account just for emergencies, which they treat like a vending machine with my name on it. So, when the usual text came through, holiday brunch tomorrow, I almost didn't respond, but I did. We'll be there. I got the kids up early, dressed them nice, even straightened my daughter's hair, and let my son bring his Switch in the car. Picked up a box of pastries on the way. I wore the necklace my mom once liked, even though the clasp scratches my neck. When we got there, the door was unlocked. No one greeted us. The TV was blasting some morning game show. My mom was folding napkins like they owed her money. My dad was already halfway into a drink. I stepped in with a smile that no one looked at. He didn't even wait 2 minutes. My dad looked up and said loud enough for the cousins to hear, "This was meant to be a nice day. Why did you come?" My son glanced at me. "Should we leave?" I said yes, right now. No drama, no scene. I turned, kids followed, door shut behind us. Pastry still in my hand, untouched. We ended up at a diner 25 minutes away. I let them order pancakes with chocolate chips and soda at 11 in the morning. I didn't eat much, just sipped coffee while the buzzing in my chest settled into something clearer, something final. Exactly 1 hour later, my phone rang. It was him. Not to apologize, not to ask if the kids were okay. He wanted to know why the shared account suddenly showed a zero balance. I didn't answer. I just stared at the screen until it stopped ringing. Then I opened my banking app, clicked one last button, and smiled. The first call I ignored. The second one came 5 minutes later. Then a text, "Call me." What the hell is going on? I knew what was going on. He finally realized he couldn't use my money like a backup credit card anymore. I transferred every last cent from the shared account to mine and submitted a request to close it. I'd been thinking about it for months. I just needed the push. Turns out all it took was one smug sentence from him in front of my kids. At the diner, my daughter asked if we were ever going back there again. I told her, probably not. She shrugged. Good. By the time we got home, I had 6 missed calls. 3 from my dad, 1 from my mom, 2 from a cousin who never talks to me unless there's gossip. I set my phone face down and left it there. The kids settled into the living room with a movie, and I went upstairs and opened the old wooden box I kept in my closet. Inside was every receipt, every transfer, every email they sent asking for help. I started printing them out. This wasn't for them. This was for me, a record of all the times I gave when I shouldn't have, of all the ways I tried to earn something that should have come freely. Then came the email. Subject line, "Really? After all we've done for you?" It was from my mom. 5 paragraphs of guilt and 0 accountability. Apparently, I was embarrassing them by storming out in front of everyone. She said I was overreacting and making the kids soft. She ended it with, "You're lucky we even include you anymore." That line lit something in me. I clicked reply and for once I didn't hold back. I told her how I remembered being 11 and overhearing her tell my aunt that I was never supposed to happen. How she told me to hide my second pregnancy from her friends because she didn't want people thinking I was irresponsible. How she let my dad call me lazy and useless after I got laid off even when I was still paying their phone bill. I wrote and hit send before I could talk myself out of it. 20 minutes later, my dad called again. I picked up this time. He didn't even say hello, just started in with how I embarrassed him, how everyone at brunch thought I was being dramatic. He told me I better fix the account before bills bounced. I said no. He went quiet. I reminded him that he once said I'd never amount to anything because I got pregnant at 19. That when I graduated community college with honors, he didn't show up because he said it wasn't a real school. I told him I was done letting people who don't respect me live off me. Then I hung up. My hands were shaking, but it felt right. Downstairs, my aunt called, the one who always watched from the sidelines. She said she heard what happened and wanted me to know she was proud of me, that she'd been waiting years for me to cut the cord. Then she said, "Let me tell you what your mom's been saying about you behind your back." I closed the door to my bedroom and sat on the floor while my aunt talked. She didn't hold back. She said my mom had been telling people for years that I was always asking for help, that I was bad with money and couldn't keep a man, that I used my kids to get sympathy, that I'd be lost without them. I laughed out loud at that part. Lost without the two people who never showed up to my baby showers, who forgot my birthday 2 years in a row, who made me bring my own Thanksgiving leftovers home in a plastic grocery bag while my cousin left with a foil tray the size of a suitcase. My aunt kept going. She told me that the reason the family always seemed distant, why no one reached out after my divorce, why people avoided inviting me to gatherings, it was because of them. My mom had been painting me as unstable, overly sensitive, hard to deal with. It wasn't just that they didn't defend me. They made sure I was the family punchline. I stayed quiet while my aunt talked, let her empty it all out. She said she wanted to step in years ago, but didn't want to make things worse for me. But now that I'd finally drawn a line, she wasn't going to stay silent anymore. She ended the call with something I didn't expect. "If you need anything, you come to me. You've done enough for them." That night, I didn't sleep. I couldn't stop replaying the moments I used to defend them. When my friends asked why I still talked to them, I always had some excuse. They had a rough life, they don't know better, they mean well. None of that was true. I went back through my emails, printed out more receipts. The list was longer than I thought. I wrote dates and reasons next to every transfer: dad's insurance deductible, casino weekend, mom's prescription money, new designer handbag she posted a week later, birthday gift for my cousin she forgot to shop for. Every lie, every manipulation on paper all at once. And I still hadn't told my kids what really happened. I didn't want to turn them against their grandparents, but I also wasn't going to lie anymore. The next morning, my son asked if we'd be seeing Grandpa again. I told him probably not. He nodded. "He did good. He's mean to you." I nearly broke right there, but I held it in. Instead, I took the printed papers, put them in a folder, and labeled it in case I forget why I stopped answering. By noon, I blocked their numbers. And that's when the real chaos started. By the time I blocked their numbers, I felt something close to relief. But peace doesn't last long when you're dealing with people who don't believe they can lose you. It started with a knock on my door 2 days later. I wasn't expecting anyone. I looked through the peephole and saw my cousin Mark standing there with a bag from the bakery we always went to, his kids. I hesitated, then opened it. He didn't say hi. Just handed me the bag and said, "You should read the card." Inside was a note in my mom's handwriting. She didn't sign it. Just wrote, "This is what happens when you turn your back on your family. You don't get to come back." It wasn't an apology. It wasn't even a threat. It was a declaration, like I was the one who walked away from something good, like I was the one breaking the code. I looked at Mark and asked if he agreed with her. He didn't answer. Just said he was told to drop it off. Then he asked if I'd close the account because I was in some kind of phase, like I was acting out. I didn't argue. I told him goodbye, closed the door, and tossed the entire bag in the trash. An hour later, I got a call, not from a blocked number, but from my bank. My dad had tried to log in using my old credentials. When he failed the security check, he called the bank pretending to be me. Said his daughter was busy and needed help with the joint account. He gave my social security number, my birthday. They flagged it and froze everything temporarily for my protection. I was stunned. I hadn't expected him to go that far. Then I remembered I'd sent him a photo of my license years ago when he needed my ID for a notarized form. He'd kept it. The betrayal had layers I hadn't even reached yet. I went to the bank in person, explained everything, showed the folder of printed evidence. The woman helping me blinked a few times and said quietly, "You should think about getting legal protection." I didn't want to believe it was that serious. Then I got the email from an address I didn't recognize, but the writing was unmistakable. My dad again. He said I'd made a fool of the family, that people were asking questions, and I'd better start clearing up the lies. That if I didn't fix this, he'd tell the rest of the family what kind of mother I really was. That line got to me, not because it scared me, but because it was stupid. My kids were the only people whose opinion I cared about, and they knew who I was. They saw me exhausted, working 2 jobs, making boxed mac and cheese stretch for 2 days, putting every dollar toward rent, food, their clothes. They knew I was trying, but it still stung, the way they twisted things so easily. The next day, my aunt showed up at my house with a manila envelope. She said, "I think it's time you see something." Inside were printouts, screenshots, photos, text messages my mom had sent to various family members over the years, screenshots of her mocking my job, telling people I chose to be broke, joking that I was addicted to being the victim, even a message where she implied I might not know who my son's real father was. My hands went cold. Then I saw the last photo. It was a picture of my dad smiling with a check in his hand, a check I had written to cover their mortgage 2 years ago. Caption said, "When you raise a sucker, but it finally pays off." That was the moment something in me broke for good. I sat on the edge of the couch holding that photo like it was a piece of rotting meat. My aunt didn't say anything. She just sat beside me, arms crossed, waiting for me to speak, but I couldn't, not yet. That photo of my dad grinning with the check was burned into my brain. I remembered the exact day I gave it to him. It was winter. The heater in my apartment had broken, and I'd been layering socks on my kids' feet at night. But when he called and said the bank was about to foreclose, I didn't even hesitate. I wired the money, went to sleep in a freezing apartment, and told myself that's just what you do for family. That check had almost cleaned out my savings. He'd called me his little lifesaver that day. Told me I had a good heart. Meanwhile, he was sending photos to his friends, calling me a sucker. I looked up at my aunt and asked why she had all this now. She said another cousin had come forward, someone who'd been on the family group chat I wasn't even in. Apparently, my mom and dad had been talking behind my back for years, making jokes, spinning lies, turning people against me. But now that I'd finally cut them off, cracks were showing. People were starting to ask questions. And one of them had sent the proof to my aunt who'd finally had enough. She said, "You need to protect yourself. I think they're not done." I didn't know what she meant until that night. I got an email from the local police department. A fraud report had been filed against me. My dad claimed I'd stolen from him, said I'd cleaned out his account without permission and refused to give it back. Attached were forged screenshots, sloppy ones, but enough to get someone's attention. It was clear now, he wasn't just mad. He was trying to ruin me. The morning after everything came crashing into clarity, I didn't hesitate. I collected every piece of evidence I had, bank statements, receipts, printed screenshots of harassing messages, and the exhaustive timeline I'd painstakingly put together detailing every incident, and drove straight to the local police station. My heart was pounding, but my resolve was ironclad. I spread it all out on the desk in front of the officer assigned to me. He listened intently, taking notes, his face growing more serious with each page I handed over. About halfway through my explanation, he looked up, one eyebrow arched in quiet concern, and asked, "Would you like to file for a restraining order against him?" The words felt heavy in the air. It was almost unthinkable, seeking legal protection from my own father, but the answer rose steadily inside me. "Yes," I said, without a trace of doubt. Strange as it was, it also felt utterly necessary, the only sane response to years of control disguised as care. That afternoon, while I was still processing the morning's events and sitting on hold with the county clerk's office to follow up on paperwork, my children wandered into the room. My daughter climbed onto the couch beside me, her small face creased with worry. She tugged gently at my sleeve and asked in that direct way only kids have, "Mom, why is Grandpa trying to hurt us?" The question pierced me straight through. I opened my mouth, searching for an age-appropriate truth that wouldn't shatter her world further, but before I could form the words, my son, only 10 years old, spoke up from the doorway. "He's just mad because you're not giving him money anymore." It was blunt, unfiltered, and devastatingly accurate. I stared at him, stunned by how clearly he'd seen through the chaos. In that moment, the simplicity of it hit me hardest. He was absolutely right. That's all it had ever really been about. As long as the money kept flowing, I was valuable, useful, compliant, the dependable one. The instant I closed the tap, I transformed in their eyes from daughter to enemy, from provider to traitor. The love had always been conditional, measured in dollars and obedience. That night, as the reality settled deeper, my phone lit up with more attempts to pull me back in. I blocked 5 additional numbers without a second thought, 2 cousins who'd suddenly become mouthpieces, an old friend of my mother's whose loyalty had always run one way, and one number I didn't even recognize but whose message carried the same venomous tone. The smear campaign was now in full, frantic motion, whispers, accusations, rewritten history spreading through the family network like wildfire. But their efforts no longer rattled me. I'd finally seen the pattern for what it was, and I was done caring about their version of the story. Just when I thought the storm might be easing, a notification appeared that stopped me cold. A private message on Facebook from someone I hadn't spoken to in nearly 10 years, my brother, Jason. We'd lost all contact after he left home at 17, packing a single bag and vanishing without explanation. For years I'd judged him harshly, calling him selfish, convinced he'd abandoned us all without a backward glance. Now, With painful new perspective, I understood the truth. He hadn't run away from us. He'd been the first to escape, the first to recognize the toxicity and save himself before it consumed him completely. The message was short, almost understated. I heard what they did. I'm sorry it took this long. I believe you. I read it over and over, sitting frozen in the dim light of my bedroom screen. I hadn't realized he was even aware of what was happening, let alone still loosely connected enough to hear the rumors. His words carried no demands, no defensiveness, just quiet solidarity after a decade of silence. I couldn't remember the sound of his voice anymore, couldn't picture the details of his face beyond old photographs, yet those few sentences felt like a lifeline thrown across a chasm I'd only just discovered was there. For the first time in years, the idea of family shifted again, not the one I'd been clinging to out of obligation, but something truer, waiting quietly on the other side. We messaged back and forth a few times, tentative at first, like two people testing the ice after a long winter. Each reply carried layers of history we were only beginning to unpack. Jason explained that everything I was uncovering now, the patterns, the manipulation, the quiet erosion of trust, he had seen with painful clarity years earlier. That's why he left, he said. He couldn't stay in a system that demanded blind loyalty while offering nothing but control in return. The only reason he hadn't tried to reach me sooner was because our father had fed him a devastating lie, that I hated him, that I held him responsible for breaking the family apart, that I wanted no contact. It was a cruel invention, designed to keep us isolated from each other. They're masters at dividing people, he wrote. They did the same thing to me, made me doubt everyone who might have stood with me. Hearing it spelled out like that shifted something inside me. The anger I'd carried wasn't just for the recent betrayals, it was for the slow, deliberate theft of time. All those birthdays, holidays, ordinary days we could have shared, gone. They had turned brother against sister with nothing more than carefully placed words, twisting affection into suspicion, love into resentment. Every relationship that didn't align with their needs had been undermined, quietly poisoned until it withered. We weren't the only victims, we were just the closest ones. Later that evening, I sat alone with my phone and opened my contacts. I added his number again. I typed Jason, nothing more, no label, no title, no expectation. Just his name, the way it should have always been there. Then I took a breath and did something I'd been afraid to do for years. I posted. I didn't spill every detail. I didn't call anyone out by name. I simply spoke my truth in plain words. I was done supporting people who disrespected me. Financial abuse is real, even, and sometimes especially, when it comes from family. Loyalty that flows only one way, demanded but never returned, isn't loyalty, it's bondage wearing a kinder mask. And I would no longer diminish myself, silence my needs, or shrink my life to keep selfish people comfortable. The fallout was swift. A wave of unfollows appeared almost instantly. A few private messages arrived, sharp and hostile, worded in ways that felt suspiciously coordinated, little arrows clearly loosed on someone else's behalf. But outweighing them were the messages of support, some from people I barely knew, others from old friends who had been waiting for a sign that it was safe to speak. Many shared fragments of their own stories, similar patterns, similar pain. It felt like pushing open a heavy door I'd assumed was locked forever, only to find a room full of light and other voices on the other side. My aunt called the next day. She had seen the post and told me, voice thick with emotion, that she was proud of me, prouder than she'd been in years. While we talked, my daughter slipped into the room, sketchbook in hand. She waited quietly until I hung up, then opened to a fresh page. There was a drawing in colored pencil, the three of us, her brother, and me, at our favorite diner booth. Plates of pancakes, syrup glistening, steam rising. Three faces turned toward one another, unmistakably happy. She met my eyes and said, I like it best when it's just us. That small, honest sentence landed like a cornerstone. Everything clicked into place. This wasn't a breakdown, a surrender, or a loss. It was the first solid step of reconstruction, choosing who and what would be part of the new foundation. That same night, I pulled both kids onto the couch with me. I turned my phone completely off, screen dark, notifications silenced, for the first time in weeks. We sat wrapped in one blanket, and I spoke the words out loud so the universe could hear them. No one gets to treat us like we don't matter. Not ever again. Not friends, not anyone else, and especially not family. We deserve better, and we're going to have it. I meant every syllable, and I kept my word. The joint account remained closed. The number stayed blocked. My father reached out a few times, calls, messages, attempts to pull the old strings, but each time he met only quiet resolve. For the first time in his life, he asked for something and received a clear, unwavering no. He was left to sit with the echo of his own behavior. And from now on, He would have to grow accustomed to the silence he had helped create.